train for resolution, symptoms, and more. So we go for global improvement. All right? The training is interactive. The client is just not sitting there for 45 minutes and you're looking at the screen and nothing's happening. You have to talk to the client. You have to reinforce the client. You have to redirect the client. The client needs to talk to you. How are you feeling? Are you feeling better? Are you feeling worse? Are you feeling the same? Okay. Are you more anxious? Are you less anxious? Are you sleeping better? Are you not sleeping better? All those things. We promote personal growth and mental flexibility. And we can use an eclectic approach. Exercise, nutrition, supplementation. We need to include more things. Okay? And we focus on optimal performance. All right? Anything we do, whether we treat depression, anxiety, epilepsy, we're doing optimal brain performance. Right? So that's not a term that is reserved for athletes. It's for everybody. So we determine with the client the appropriate training protocols. We provide feedback via rewards or inhibits. We need to encourage client interaction. Again, talk to the client. Don't have the client sitting there and you're looking at the computer and you're not talking to them. You need to give them homework. I want you to eat better. I want you to exercise. I want you to practice this technique throughout the week. Self-assessments and analysis tools. They need to be able to know how they're doing. And we need to help process emotional, psychological issues. We are facilitating the integration of new skills. All right? We have to monitor the progress. We have to reward success, and we need to do follow-up. It's very important to do follow-up. The client is finished. All right? 1 month later, we need to see how they're doing. 6 months later, we need to see how they're doing. 1 year later, we need to see how they're doing. We need to know that the training was successful and the gains are being sustained. That's key. When do we want to use neurofeedback? All the time. As a primary intervention, as an adjunct treatment to other interventions, and when the client's stuck. So the client comes and tells me, I have tried psychotherapy, I have tried medication, I tried an exorcism, I have tried doing anything, and it's not working for me. So when the client's stuck, maybe neurofeedback can help. And for resistance, so I don't want to do psychotherapy, that doesn't work. Let's try this, see if it works. And you always have to be aware of secondary gains. That's very important. Sometimes your clients will have motives not to get better. All right, because it is rewarding to them not to get better, because it maintains a behavior. So, for instance, children get attention by throwing tantrums, right? So if they don't get better and they keep throwing tantrums, they keep getting attention. That's a secondary gain. Client's girlfriend is sorry for him. Well, I don't get better. My girlfriend keeps feeling sorry for me. All right, secondary gains. Those are very important. So the brain's electrical activity can show us mental, emotional states, sensory information, memory formation, cognitive decision making, output functions, and all of that can be trained. Again, we talk about tendencies, right? It's a tendency that we can optimize. So we do rewarding. We can do 19 channels, between 1 and 8 channels. And so when do we train? Once, twice per week. I never do less than 2 sessions per week. I always do at least 2 sessions per week. If you want to build neuroplasticity, you need more than 1 session per week. How does the session last? My sessions last 45 minutes. I don't do more, and I don't do less. I have found that 45 minutes is just long enough, I think. Okay? Recently, somebody posted on a Facebook group that they're going to neurofeedback. Every session is 90 minutes. I think that's really long. So that's really too much. 45 minutes between the hookup and training, I think it's long enough. Sometimes I have clients that come out of town or out of the country. I do 2 sessions per day, 5 days a week. If the client's coming from out of town. If they're here if they're in my office for a specific period of time, then I do that. And that's fine. Most of them handle it pretty well. So, addictions is complicated. I don't do addictions unless they're they're in a treatment facility. I do summer intensives. So I have the kids come from 2 or 3 weeks and we do intensive work. And it's a summer camp. It's a neurofeedback summer camp. And we take that into consideration. So 20 to 40 sessions are the standard. I do a brain map. I do 20 sessions and I repeat the brain map. If the client is better, they're discharged. If they need more sessions, they need more sessions. For the most part, on average, most of the clients you see are going to need at least 40 sessions. At least. Epilepsy could be more, depression could be more. There are conditions that require more sessions. But on average, my experience is that most clients need about 40 sessions. And 40 sessions are good. So, a greater number of sessions for more severe conditions, autistic spectrum disorder, Tourette's, trauma, depression, TBI. Those normally mean more than 40 sessions. 60, 80, 100 sessions. So when is the client finished? When do we know that we're done with the neurofeedback? Well, when the therapeutic goals have been reached, whatever those are between you and your client. When the testing measures are normal, so we have a pre-EEG that looks very red, and we have post-EEG that looks more normal, we're good to go. When the physiological measures are normal, okay? So we always want to go the extra mile. We want to go beyond the training. We want to train for more. So, under promise, over deliver. We're gonna under promise and over deliver. That's a good approach. I under promise, but I over deliver. So that's a good thing. So easy conditions to work with: ADHD, insomnia. Those are somewhat easy. Anxiety is somewhat easy to work with. It depends. Migraine headaches are somewhat easy to work with. Peak performance is somewhat easy to work with. It's not a walk in the park. It's not a piece of cake, but they're relatively easy to work with. Now, more difficult conditions: seizure disorders. So if you don't have experience working with seizure disorders, find a mentor. I didn't work with epilepsy for a long time. I only started working with epilepsy 4 years ago, so 3 years ago, because I didn't have the confidence. Now I feel more confident working with it. Bipolar disorder is very complicated or difficult to work with. Substance abuse disorders, addictions, because they're poorly motivated, they're good liars, they're very manipulative, and there can be lack of experience from a clinician. And if it is not an inpatient setting, if they're not in a treatment facility, it's better not to waste your time most of the time, because they're not gonna get showed through the door. So depression depends, and those are the things we need to take into account. So let's get to the nitty-gritty. So I need a volunteer that I can train, please. Somebody that I can hook up to do the training? Anybody? To do some CC training, basic stuff? All right. Thank you. Oh, Keith, by the way, I need the blue throats, please. Thank you. No, the blue throat. You have them? Oh, those, no, those. Okay, so we are running into some difficulties, but we're going to adjust to that. So, let's talk about the thresholds. Okay, so we need to. Sorry about that, but we don't have the blue throats. So, let's talk about the threshold setting, right? So, client comes in, and you're going to set the session, right? So I'm gonna use a pre-recorded session to give you an idea of what the software looks like. So you come to BioTrace and you open it, and oops, go to that screen here. There. So we got BioTrace, which is our software for the Nexus. Now, I'm gonna load a screen. I'm gonna choose the Neurofeedback screen. Let's say we're gonna train with a basic one, a classic one, and we're gonna use space invaders. All right? So normally in Neurofeedback, the goal is to have at least an inhibit and 2 rewards. That's what you're gonna have, right? So in this case, we have the inhibits are going to be theta and high beta. And as the reward, we're going to choose SMR. Okay? So we're going to inhibit, reward. So the training will work as long as we're below the threshold, and above the threshold. You have to meet the requirements to do that. Okay? So, what we need to decide is how we're going to do it. So, the first thing I'm going to recommend that you do, first thing, before every session, always do a 90-second baseline. Before every session, record a 90-second baseline. So, for 1.5 minutes, you want to record the baseline. How do you do that? Set the client, you hook them up, and you record for 90 seconds without any activity. All right? So you tell the client, I'm going to record a 90-second baseline, and I just want you to sit down, look at the screen, and be as relaxed as you can. Right? And you record for 90 seconds. We do it for 2 reasons. One, baseline is going to help us set the tone for the session. And 2, when we record baseline, we're going to see if the numbers are going down, where we want it to go down, and if they're going up, where we want it to go up. So let's say we're suppressing theta. We're doing theta SMR. We're going to do the basic theta SMR protocol here. So I do my recording. and I do my baseline every session. So if between the first 5 or 10 sessions, I'm going to look at the theta amplitude for the baseline, and I'm going to see if it is going down. If it is going down, it means the training is being successful. If it is not going down, we either give it more sessions or we switch the protocol. So, for the most part, on average, clients will start experiencing and exhibiting changes between the first 5 to 10 sessions. Okay? On average, it takes about 5 to 10 sessions for clients to experience and exhibit changes, positive changes. Some clients get what you call session effects. A session effect is the client comes, you train them, and they feel better from that session. So it's the client who comes and tells you, comes to the second session, you ask them how they felt after the first session, and they say, I slept so much better. I was very relaxed. I was able to focus. So those are session effects, because you feel it from the first session. Does it mean the training is going to be successful? We don't know that. We need to finish the 20 sessions, the 40 sessions, or the 60 sessions, or whatever sessions how many sessions we have planned for them. And the next thing is that they're going to feel training effects. So training effects is when the accumulation of the sessions are going to start providing changes. What are those changes? Well, it depends on what your goals are. Sleep better, focus better, be happier, win more golf tournaments, anything, all right? So record a 90-minute baseline. Now, for the training, you're gonna have different options. So this is a basic screen, it's called Space Invaders, and you have a spaceship here, and you have the aliens coming down on you, and you have to be below the threshold, be below the threshold, be above the threshold, and the ship will fire. So you set up your inhibit, you set up your rewards. In BioTrace, you have the option of doing auto threshold. So if I right click and I go feedback options and thresholds, you have the option of auto threshold, which means the line will move automatically for 6 minutes in this case. So I'm gonna replay a session, and you see that. See? So the lines are all moving automatically. It means it's auto threshold. Now, I do not recommend that you use it, because when you do the baseline, you're going to look at the numbers, and that's going to be your starting point. So let's assume, with that in mind, let's assume that you did a baseline for this client and you saw that the theta was at 10 microvolts, sorry. And the high beta was at 4, and this is what you set up on your own. So you start at 10 microvolts. You have the choice to set up your threshold at 10, to make it lower, or to make it higher. What does that depend on? It depends on whether the client is new or has more experience. If the client is new, I'm going to set it higher. And I recommend that you make the first session or the first 2 sessions very easy for the client. You want the client to feel successful. Okay? You want the client to be successful. So you make it easier. So if at baseline this was at 10 microvolts, I'm going to set it up at 15. And if at baseline this was at 4 microvolts, I'm going to go to 8. Now, those are the numbers I'm saying, and those are randomly selected. You can choose to go higher, or you can choose to go lower. Okay? There's freedom in this. because the client is a real expert. But first session or 2 sessions, you want to make it easy with the client. You don't want them to feel frustrated because they're showing up to your practice frustrated in the first place. They want you to help them not to be frustrated. All right? And then the SMR, or the 12 to 15, you're going to set up to be so that the threshold is high for it. Okay? Now I'm going to set this to sound on and new game on. And I'm going to replay the session. So the other thing that I have to do is go to feedback options and thresholds, and I'm going to shut down, I'm going to turn off the auto threshold option. Okay, I'm not going to do that because I already know how to set it up. I'm a competent professional and I don't need the computer to tell me. I'm going to do it myself. Alright, so we hit play. So the ship will fire as long as the criteria is met. So see that? I'm making it easy. I want the ship to fire as often as possible. So the client, you're telling the client, good work, look at that, you're focused and you're making it fire. Keep going, and every now and then you give them some positive feedback. All right? And you go, very nice work, keep going. So I do that. Now the next question that brings us to is, how long do we train for? So I established that my sessions are 45 minutes long. How many periods per session? Well, I usually like to do 2 minutes of intensive training. So they train intensively for 2 minutes, and then they get 1 minute off. So for every 2 minutes they train, they rest for 1 minute. That's one way of doing it. And there's a paper that I'm going to share with you that talks about, that explains why that is a good method for training. But you can do 3 minutes if you want. You can do 4 minutes if you want. Again, depends whether the client is new or they're more experienced. So, if the client is new, start with short periods. 2, maximum 3 minutes of intensive training, and you let them rest. Now, the other thing is, the client is going to be sitting here, training, and I always ask the client to bring something to drink and something to eat. All right, so the client is here, and he trained for the 2 minutes, and I go, drink some water. So he's going to take a break, going to drink some water, and he's going to eat something. Now, something to drink means water or juice, natural juice. Something to drink does not mean Red Bull or Coca-Cola or beer or wine or tequila or whatever they like. Okay, it means not something that's going to hydrate them and it's not going to hurt their brain. Because it happened to me, I had this very, this mom who had very poor parenting skills. I mean, it was horrible. And one day I said, they need to bring something to drink. And next thing, I know he's walking through the door with a Coke like this. Bottle of Coke this big. And so I told the mom, no, it needs to be water. And the kid starts throwing a tantrum. Next session, she comes in with the Coke again. So I had to tell her, look, if you're not going to follow my directions, take your money back and don't come back here. Okay? Because I'm not going to parent your child. You are going to parent your child. And if you're not going to help, forget it. Neurofeedback is not a miracle. All right. So they understood the message and they brought water. Okay? And they can bring something to eat, which can be fruit, or it can be some cheese, it could be some veggies, carrots, or tomato, or something like that, spinach, or shredded chicken, a hard-boiled egg. As long as it's something that is not inflammatory for the client, they can eat it. And why do I do that? Well, because they're using energy that you need to replenish. The brain is using energy when we train with neurofeedback. It's like going to the gym. When you go to the gym, you're sore and you're tired. What do? Or you go eat something. Feel better. So drinking and hydrating is good. Okay? So I recommend you do that. Now, the other thing is for all clients, even the ones who don't have a sugar addiction, I do not give candy away. There's neurofeedback practitioners who, are very well intended and they reward with candy. Do not reward with candy. I don't recommend that you reward with candy. Okay? Give them toys, give them tokens, something that it can exchange for a prize, but not the candy because it's just going to make things worse. So with that in mind, we train for 2 minutes initially, and they rest for 1 minute, they hydrate, and they can do some exercising. Sometimes when the client has done 20 to 40 sessions, I go up to 5 minutes, but I don't do more than that. Okay? Because it's too much. The brain has a learning curve that you have to respect. So I start 2 minutes to 3 minutes, go up to 5 minutes tops, and give them 1.5 minutes to rest, to eat something, to hydrate. Okay? Now sometimes the client will be very tired during the session. The client will be very, very tired during the session. Sometimes they come in with a flu, sometimes they didn't sleep well, sometimes they get bad news. It happens. So don't expect the client to do well every session. Some sessions are really just bad sessions. The client is going to do poorly. And that's okay. Don't get frustrated. Good. Next step then is threshold setting. And threshold setting has a time option. So you're going to see that this is set up at 500 milliseconds, half a second. And this is to inhibit the feedback. So every time the theta crosses over the threshold for more than half a second, the ship is not going to fire. And people ask me, do I choose half a second? Do I choose 1 second? Do I choose a quarter of a second? Do I not choose anything? Well, the answer is, it depends. Some literature is going to say, and Barry Sterman who's big in the discoverer of the SMR rhythm, will say 250 seconds is where you get good, that's how you get operant conditioning, 250 seconds. Again, it depends on the client. For clients that are new, I recommend that you start with 500. Okay? Or 250. As the client gets better, if you can, go to 0. So when they've done 15, 21st sessions, you can start training with 0. Which means that there's no time delay. Every time the bar crosses, it's going to immediately inhibit the feedback. Now, I like to do something which is varying training. And I recommend that you do that too. So I recommend that you use 500 one session, then 250, then 0. And you vary it. You keep it different and novel. Because the brain likes that. And the brain needs it. Think about it. If you do this, when you do the same thing every day of your life for a few days, then you get tired. If you were to eat chicken for lunch for 1 week, next thing you see a live chicken, you're gonna run away. So one day you eat chicken, the next day you eat rice, the next day you have soup. The brain doesn't like linear thinking, linear training. So do it differently. And it's good because the brain gets used to different modes. That's my taking. And some of my colleagues might criticize me for it, and they're within their right. That's how I do it, and that's how it works for me. You don't have to do it that way. The things that I'm telling you, you don't have to do them. These are just suggestions. And I recommend that you find your own style. That's very important. Find your own style of training. So you can start with 500, you can go to 0, whichever you want, okay? The literature says 250 is the appropriate time to get operant conditioning. So I'm gonna click OK, and I'm gonna hit play, and if you see it's firing constantly because it's got a delay. It's got a delay. If I go to 0, for instance, I change this to 0, well, it's going to be harder for a client. But if the bar goes up, so every time it goes up, see, there's no delay, it's going to stop the firing. So it's up to you to decide. But for new clients, usually start with 500. You want to make it easy on them. I mean, don't go too harsh on them because they need to learn. But you're going to have fast learners. You're going to have fast learners. So you can challenge them right away. Athletes, they love to be challenged. They will ask you, make it hard. Make it challenging, make it difficult. All right? That's one thing. So that's the threshold setting for the time, correct? If you notice, the blue bar, which is high beta, is jumping quite a lot, which means this client is producing a lot of high beta. So one option that you have is that you can smooth it. So you can control how fast the bar moves. If you go right click and you go display options and ranges, you have the smoothing here. And it's set up at 8. For new clients, I set up all the way up to 64. And look at how nice that looks. So it's not jumping that much. Do I want to keep it at 64 all the time? No. I want to vary it. I want to make it variable, new, random. So next session the client comes, I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to see how you do at 32. Let's go. So let's go 50% reduction. And then you challenge them. But when they're new, usually for the first 10 sessions, go with 500 to 250 milliseconds and go with the smoothing at 64 maybe. I mean, it's just going to make it easy on the client. And so that way, you have an idea. And you can do the same with the theta. Display options and ranges, go to 64, and that makes it easy on you. So again, these are the kinds of things that you would talk to with a mentor. If you find a mentor, then you know it's gonna be easy for you to learn those things. And then the experience will tell you. You know, what's the best kind of experience and best kind of learning? Clinical work. Client work is going to give you the experience for that. So far, so good? Any questions? Okay, so we have that. We have the threshold set up, we have the feedback set up, we have the smoothing. You can train with sound if you want to. So you can make it more contingent to the training. If I wanted to, I could add a tone that's going to signal the brain that they're doing a good job. And I could do it with the reward. So I could right click on it and I could say feedback options and thresholds. So I want to say above thresholds, I'm going to do a reward, which is a sound. So I go MIDI tone feedback. I'm going to use a tone. I'm going to go edit, and I know the sound is going to. That's the problems with audio. Yes. Oh, there we go. Straight. There we go. Thank you. So So that's the ship firing, right? But I play this for the client. So I go feedback options and thresholds, I do edit, and I play them for the client, and I let the client choose which one he or she likes. Okay? Because I could choose this one, and the client will not like it. So they will start tensing up. So let's say the client likes that one, right? So again, I click OK, and I choose whether I want to give it time. So I choose whether I want to delay it half a second and force the brain to train a little more. Okay? Now for the reward, it's usually good to set a time frame, a time delay, because we're forcing those neurons to fire just a little longer. So let's say we make it 500. So what's going to happen is that the brain is going to have to hold the SMR, or the 12 to 15, for at least half a second before the tone is presented. And we hit OK, and we hit play. And there you go, there's your tone. So every time he goes below threshold and above threshold, the tone is going to play. So let's make this a little higher here. There you go. So I tell the client, every time you hear the tone, it means that you're focused and relaxed. Okay? Which brings me to the next point. Every time you train the client, the instruction is before you begin the session, I want you to focus, I want you to relax. That's all you tell the client. I want you to be relaxed and focused. What does that mean? Well, relaxed means I want you to focus on your muscles. Pay attention to your face muscles, your neck muscles, your shoulder muscles. Because if the client is tense, the beta is going to go up because the EMG is going up, which means there's more anxiety. And when I say focused, I mean just try to empty your mind as much as you can. And focus on the ship firing. And I tell the client, what are well the two things you have to do? I have to be relaxed and focused. So you check they're paying attention to you. Okay, relaxed and focused. That's the two things they have to do. And at first it's going to sound strange to them because they're not going to know how to focus. They're relaxed, they understand they have to relax. But the focus, they don't understand what the process behind it is. And that's okay. It takes sessions for them to get the idea. And I also tell them, when you feel the ship is firing constantly, I want you to pay attention what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And I want you to replicate it. So the client is going to use some introspection, and they're gonna see, and they're gonna feel what it is like to be in the zone. So then they can use it over and over and over again. Because neurofeedback is a discovery process. It's a trial and error process. And it's via that trial and error that the brain learns, and we help the client. So far, so good? So, for the reward, it's usually good to set up a time. For the inhibit, it depends. Depends on you, depends on the client, depends on how the session is going, depends on what the challenges are for that session. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So again, I recommend that you experiment. I mean, do not experiment to the point the client turns into a guinea pig, but experiment with different things to the point where you're doing an ethical, responsible job. All right? Now, the next point is how do we set the ranges for the inhibitor or the reward? So we already know how to set the threshold. We already know how to set the time. We know that we can set a tone, or we can do either auditory or just visual feedback. Now we're going to go with the band ranges. So when we looked at the EEG, we saw 2 to 20, 2 to 13 for the suppress and the reward. Okay? That's also a variable concept. Where do you go in BioTrace to do it? Well, let's say we're playing here. And we have the client playing, and we want him to fire, not fire, so set it. You go to configuration and you go to the third option, and it's going to display a window where you have all your setups. See them right here? So here's your EEG raw 1, EEG raw 2, and then we work on each channel. So here's your theta brainwave for channel 1 and alpha, and it's set up at its default frequency: 4 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 18, and so on and so forth. You can leave it like that if you want to, or you can go with what the brain map tells you. Now the other option is to go with what your gut instinct and your clinical experience tell you, and most importantly, with what your client is responding to. So let's look at the. I'm gonna go back to the high beta, and I'm gonna take out the smoothing because we saw that was jumping too much. So let's go back to this and see how that high beta is going. So normally we want to make it smoother because that's just too much, right? The other option is that I can go here to the channel, and I have high beta, channel 66, which is set up from 21 to 35. The way you're going to set up the frequencies is based largely on how your client is responding. Okay? So 25 to 35, let's say the client is feeling too anxious. And it's clear that the client is feeling too anxious because look at what that is doing. Right? So what are we going to do? Are we going to augment it? Are we going to make it the range larger and broader, or are we going to reduce it? What will you do? So you reduce it. Why? Because you want to reduce the reaction of the client, right? So instead of doing 21 to 35, I'm going to see if I can do 21 to 30. All right? And see what happens. So I can do it on the fly. I can do it while the client is training. So I'm going to go 21, 34, and 30. And that made it a little better, see? So see how that changes? Now I need to smooth it, but that helps out. Now, so we're gonna leave it at 21 to 30, and we train for a few minutes. Then I ask the client, how's the anxiety? Is it better? Is it worse? Or is it the same? If the client says the same, we train for a little longer. If after a few minutes he says it's the same, we need to change it again. If I change it and I ask the client, how is the anxiety feeling? Is it better? Is it worse? Or is it the same? And if they say it's better, then we knew that's a better frequency. If he says I'm worse, then you need to change it again. So instead of going 21 to 30, you could go 21 to 25, or 21 to 28, or 21 to 22. Okay? This is tweaking the frequency so that we can synchronize and go into symphony and with the and we get tuned with the brain. So think of these as when you're looking for a radio station in your radio in your car, and it takes you to find the right frequency to get to that radio station. Otherwise, you're getting noise. So what you're doing is using this to attune the brain, and your client's brain will go, "Oh, that's the frequency," because they will feel relaxed and they will feel focused. So for the high frequencies, if the client's feeling too anxious, bring them down. Now what happens if you bring it down too much? The client will go, "Oh, I'm sleepy now." So you bring it up a little bit. And you tweak it until your client says, "I'm feeling it right there. I feel relaxed and I feel focused, and the training is progressing smoothly and you're achieving the objectives of the session." So sometimes, for instance, with theta, a lot of people go the conventional way. They go 4 to 8. All right? Sometimes I go 5 to 7. And what I will do is I will find my theta channel, and I go 5 to 7. And I trained there for a while. Okay? Or I go, or if I see that it is getting better, I stay there. If I see the clients falling asleep, I will go maybe 5 to 8. Okay? There's no exact formula for this. It's trial and error. And it takes talking to your client. So do not change the frequency and expect your client to feel better. You need to ask them. Okay? Because some clients trust you so much that if you're causing anxiety, they're gonna think that that's part of the process. And they get shy about it, and they're afraid to say anything. No. Have the client talk to you. Right? You need to have the client talk to you. Tell me how he feels. If he feels worse, please tell me right away. If you get a headache, tell me right away. If you get sleepy, tell me before you fall asleep. All right? Tell me right away. And that's the teamwork that I was talking about when we first started the session this morning. You're tweaking, and the brain is responding, and the client is telling you, "Yes, I like it. No, I don't like it." So sometimes I will go 5 to 7. Sometimes we'll go 5 to 6. If the theta is too stubborn and he's not responding, he's not budging, I will just go 5 to 6 and I train there for a few sessions. The important thing is that the client gets better. And what are the measures of change that we look for? Well, one is the qEEG. We want changes in the qEEG from 20 sessions to another 20 sessions. So if the brain map looks better, it means we're doing the right job. And the other one is the client's report. I'm feeling better. I'm sleeping better. Oh, little Timmy is doing his homework now. We're not getting notes from school anymore. I'm not depressed. My coworkers and friends tell me I look happier. So those two things you look for. Client reports and the numbers changing in the direction that you're looking for. And you do that regardless of what type of feedback you're using. So you could use this, or you could use a movie, or a video training. So let's load another. Let's go to another screen here, and you can use it, for instance, and you can play a movie or any other kind of video. So see, here's the auto threshold. So if you want to turn it off, you turn it off, and you set the threshold, whatever you want to set for the session. So let's do this. Let's look for the same thing. And that has some audio, right? So you can take the audio away, or you can leave the audio. Where do you go? You go here, feed the options and thresholds, and you can say no feedback, sorry. There you go. Now, yes. When do I decide to change the screen? Oh, you mean the type of feedback? I usually use different screens for each session. Yeah, prevent boredom. Yeah. Now, sometimes I will use the same screen and make the session as boring as I can. Why? Because the brain needs to train under those conditions. Sometimes the training needs to be a little boring. Because sometimes we do repetitious things. All of us have to do repetitious things every now and then, and we want the brain to work under those conditions. Now, with one of the advantages of training with movies is that, for instance, with children, they can use the same movie for 100 sessions. They can watch Wreck-It Ralph, or the Rugrats, or Smurfs, or whatever movie they're watching, they can watch it for 100 sessions. The problem is if you can tolerate it. Because for the therapist, it can get really boring to watch the same movie over and over and over again. So you have to negotiate that with the client. There's a game called Zucor, and I'm going to show it to you. Well, no, it's not called Zucor. Zucor is the company that makes the game, and they make games for biofeedback and neurofeedback. So what I'm going to use is a dual screen here. There we go. And I'm going to close this one here. So I'm going to reopen BioTrace. And I recommend, if you can, that you buy the Zucor games. I'm going to show you why. Because they're designed for this purpose, and they're very useful. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to open up one called Drive. Okay, and you're going to see the graphs are beautiful, very, very nice. Okay, and it's a car racing game. Okay, what I like about Drive is that it has several options. It's got about 20 different tracks. It's got cars that you can choose from, and you can set up the training settings. So I'm going to go with an open demo. So you have different options here. You can choose how long they go for. So for instance, I go at least 3 minutes, and we do about, I don't know, 7 periods per session, and you can do the auto start in the next period. So it's all timed. I usually give them about 90 seconds. So when they end up the first 3 minutes, they get 90 seconds to rest. So they get to eat some